Hello and welcome to this video for the full moon in Sagittarius occurring today, Tuesday, June the 10th, and tomorrow, Wednesday, June the 11th of 2025. For this video, I'm going to break it up and discuss how the energies are affecting us overall in terms of what does Sagittarius mean and what energies does it bring. I'm also going to look at long-term cycles. This full moon in particular is a super full moon. It is a super moon. It is a strawberry moon. It will be bright and pink in the sky above us, hopefully tonight if the skies stay clear for us to see it. And what a super moon means is that it is closest to the Earth within its orbit. The moon is closest to the Earth within its orbit throughout this particular lunar cycle, and it's showing up at our full moon. So it's really big and bold in the sky. And as it's illuminating all these energies that Sagittarius brings, I really feel that this is an opportune time to dive back and look at the longer term cycles of Sagittarius to see where has this energy been working with you for the past 13 years and where will it then kind of walk itself through and continue its journey for us to begin a brand new cycle coming up in 2029, which is only 4 years away, which is very hard to believe. So stay tuned and let's get into it. The archetype of Sagittarius is the explorer. You can see her kind of behind me up here as she's spanning the land in front of her, looking up into the sky and searching for what is beyond. What is her higher purpose for being here? What is it that she wants to learn about and grow into and share with the world in terms of her higher self and her higher beliefs and her higher values? Sagittarius is free-spirited energy. It is adventurous and optimistic. It is philosophical and it is honest to a fault. It can be very vocal. It can be funny and risk-taking and have a very high sense of morals and a sense of ethics. Sagittarius represents our urge for travel, for exploration, for the search for higher meaning, to broaden our perspectives, broaden our minds, broaden our horizons. And it's ruled by the planet Jupiter. Also, you can see here back behind me, Jupiter, it sits beyond our personal planets. It sits beyond Mercury, Venus, Earth, and Mars. And it's there, it protects us. It is this huge planet, and its gravitational field is there to shove off the asteroids that are coming our way and all the other things that are coming our way. Jupiter is known as a grand protector. It is all about growth and opportunity and enthusiasm and potential possibilities. And again, it speaks to our ethics and our morals and what it is that we want to go after and that we feel is right and just within the world. So these energies are playing quite potently at this time. And the bigger picture of all this will take us all the way back to the year 2011 and bring us through to 2012, where we first started experiencing these new sense of growth and exploration in our world. What was coming up for us back then? I know for me personally, I was closing up what I thought was going to be my future. I had been a teacher and I had run my own private school working with children with special needs. And I had in a couple years right before then just recently become a mom. And in 2012, I had my second baby, and I had decided that I was going to focus more on the home. I was before that giving all of my energy to the families that I worked with, to the children that I worked with, to developing their needs, their communication skills, their behavioral skills, their social skills. And I really wanted to start to hone that in and bring it back into my own family that I was building at that time. So it was the beginning of me exploring who I was meant to be as a mother, who I was meant to be in terms of building that sense into my community of my tribal community, the family that I was with, who I'm known for amongst that, how I'm known to be this mothering, nurturing character, and how I'm known to be very expansive in my beliefs of what it is to raise my children and share that growth that I had my whole life prior to that within my family. So I started on this new journey back then. But at the same time, I was releasing the way I was showing up in my old community, the way I was showing up amongst my friendships. I was filtering in a new way of interacting with my husband's siblings while embracing my siblings within that role so that we can all start building this life together. I know that I was a great influence for our siblings who are much younger. And so I was an influence for most of them as to when they would become parents. Our children are some of the oldest of the bunch. And so at least within my husband's family. So we really took on that leadership role, that fatherly role or that parental role that Sagittarius might lead for others to look to us for inspiration. And that began way back when we were starting to do that. So for me, it was really about letting go of the old way that I was showing up in my communities and environments and the way I was learning and teaching other people into new ways of doing that. And so I wonder where that was showing up for other people. When you fast forward and look at the year 2020 and 2022, that was the next part of the cycle. And in that cycle, we started to release some of the old ways that we had of showing up to our higher selves and in our higher purpose. So from 2012 up until then, we had really been stepping into this new way of being. And by the time we got to 2020, we really had a lot of insight as to what we wanted that to really look like. How did I really want to be showing up as a mother to my children, as a leader to the people that look up to me, how I contribute to my grander groups, and all those things. And 2020, as we know, was a very difficult year for everybody, and it had some mass shifts for everybody. As we were doing that, we were working towards developing new ways of processing the people in our worlds, the information that we were receiving in our worlds, the environments that we were working with on a day to day. Many people shifted from ways of working. They stopped working in their community. They started working at home. Some of us moved. Me personally, I moved. I ended these huge relationships that I had built within my community for 10 years raising my children. And I left those communities. I left my role. I had gone from being a teacher to being a mom, and then becoming a force within my community as a personal trainer for, I worked out with all the other moms. I built this beautiful community in my basement, and the moms would come and we would work out. And it was time for that to end. Not only for myself, my body was changing, and I was developing, like I was growing into myself. I was entering into the older phases of my world, into perimenopause, and so my hormones were changing. I wasn't able to keep up this facade of working out 3 hours a day and doing all the things, right? But I also was letting go of the ways that I thought I was showing up beforehand. Like a lot of the things that I was keeping to myself, or that I was being known for, that I didn't want anymore in my world. I would be going out for dinners a lot and drinking a lot. I was smoking back then. I was doing all kinds of things that weren't really a part of who I wanted myself to become in my higher self. And it took a lot of release of the old ways of me managing my nervous system. Like a lot of those things were sort of coping mechanisms, ways for me to regulate myself and keep myself calm with the smoking or with the drinking and that kind of stuff. And I was ready to explore new ways of doing that, but I needed to let go of the old ways that I was processing these people and these habits that I was used to doing from the influence of these people, to develop my own kind of sense that was going to speak to who I actually and truly wanted to become. So now, when we got to 2020 and we moved through to 2022, it was really about releasing the old ways that we were showing up in terms of modeling and influencing people, by also moving towards new ways of showing up in our community, new ways of showing up in the way that we wanted to communicate our plans moving forward, new things that we wanted to learn about that were going to help us show up in those new ways. The other thing that was coming up for me back then, I was releasing, as I said, like the old way that I showed up in my community and in my relationships and in my family. And part of that was very much religion, and the religion that I was brought up in, and not having my own freedom there, not having my own sense of spirituality. And it was 2020 that really broadened that for me. I released the old and started to disassociate from the ways that I was brought up, that I never really sort of agreed with, that never really made me feel as if I was stepping into my own. And I started to embrace astrology. I had no idea what that was going to turn into. Back then in 2020 and 2021, I was working on kind of closing out the personal training aspect of me, and I was trying to build that into the grander way that I wanted to contribute to my community and to the people that I wanted to teach and share my knowledge with. And I thought back then it was strictly going to be about learning wellness stuff and teaching about how to find the right resources in order to improve your wellness. And I was just learning about my mother's struggle back then with dementia and moving into Alzheimer's, and learning about all the struggles that people my age were having, being that sandwich generation where we were taking care of our parents and we were also raising our children, and not having the resources available to us, particularly as women. And so we were finding ourselves exhausted and not having ways of moving forward. So that's how it was showing up for me. I'm sure for many people it was showing up in many different ways. I see Sagittarius energy showing up with my clients in terms of also now where they're moving, new communities, new ways that they want to have their home environment be, where they want their home environment to be. And there are still other clients that this energy is really showing up based on back then in 2011, 2012, they were exploring new ways that they could make income using their personal resources, using their knowledge and their skills to create businesses and put themselves out there so that they could make money and continue their dreams and their visions based on their passions. And when that energy started coming back at 2020 all the way through 2022, there was an ask that was being made to let go of that in terms of how they can then work with people in their community with shared resources, how they were going to start building new communications and new relationships and new interactions and within new environments so that they could start learning how to give their energies out in different ways for shared growth, for shared abundance, for shared mutual expansion. And for other clients, that's showing up in their day to day versus themselves. So back in 2011 and 2012, there was a lot of energy as to what they wanted to be. I have a lot of clients that are grandparents, and that was when they became grandparents. And they were putting all of their energy in their day to day as to how they could be of service to their children and these new babies that were in their lives. And they were releasing the old ways that they showed up as themselves for their own personal care within the way that they show up in their own identity. They were letting go of the fact that they were, adults and parents, and they were becoming this new version of their identity in becoming grandparents and what they wanted that to look like, and building new communities that supported that. Most of them will say that they worked with other grandparents, their in-laws, in order to build this new sense of themselves that had to do with this new higher purpose that they were kind of working towards. And in 2020, 2022, there was some kind of release of that. Perhaps with some of them, there was the idea. I know in my personal case, when I look at the years and how they fell for us, it would be the idea of us moving away from that home community where we all lived very, very close proximity to one another, and that being a huge change for the grandparents in our lives, and how they had gone from showing up day to day to be there to support us into now establishing new things that they could do with themselves. They had more time on their hands. They were not having to be as present on a daily basis. The grandchildren were getting older. For other people, that has shown up in terms of their relationships and in terms of what they've had to let go. Like if we go all the way back to 2011 and we look at how they wanted to show up in their relationships and in the way that they partner and relate to other people and communicate in a harmonious and a diplomatic way, they were releasing the old ways of that. They were releasing the ways that they were doing so strictly to learn about themselves. They were instead learning how they could be of greater good to the people that they were trying to create partnerships with, and all the things that they were growing with one another. And when we got to 2020, 2022, there was a kind of realization as to where some of those things were not lining up, and that they had to go back a little bit to start, embracing more of how they needed to further their own personal development in order to continue to show up in those relationships to their highest self. So those are the larger, grander scales. And as I said, we've been working with this energy in various ways, starting from 2011, and that energy was strongest 2011 to 2012. And from that period of time, we were gradually building every year as to how we were showing up. And at the same time, we were learning how to release the ways that that were tying us and holding us more codependent to the communities and the relationships and the interactions that we have on a daily basis. By the time we hit 2020, 2022, that was a real insight as to how we want to have new community around that, how we want to show up differently in our communities and our interactions and our people and our places and our things that are going to help us to expand ourselves further. And so now, as we sit here and we have 4 more years to work with this energy, we're continuing to really build new community around the way that we want to show up, whether that is through the places that we've moved through to, like physically moved to, whether that is through the new communities that we've started to establish, which would be the opposite kind of energy, whether it's through the new relationships that we've been forming, whether it's through how we show up by the contributions we make to greater society versus how we are just honing in on our own interests and our own passions. There's this beautiful balance and dance of these energies moving back and forth. So that's kind of the overall theme. And the major energies that we're talking about, particularly right now and in this video, are all about freedom and exploration and the sense of what it is that we want to further within ourselves and grow within ourselves so that we can be of the utmost use to other people, right? We want to, what is it that we're here to learn about, to grow so that we can share that with the world? So that's the overall energy. And now we'll dive into what this full moon means itself. So there's two areas of the full moon that I want to talk about. And the first is about how it is a culminating effect of what was begun 6 months beforehand. And the second, which I'll get into after, is how it sits within this specific lunar cycle. And so let's back up 6 months ago and look at what was beginning in our world 6 months ago. And that new moon in Sagittarius occurred December 1st, and it walked us through to the end of December, December 29th. And so Sagittarius, as I've already mentioned, is this beautiful, expansive, sharing energy. It's all about joviality and exploring and being adventuresome and sharing, gifting, all those things, right? Very much in tune with the holiday season that is December. But during that time, there were things that were beginning that were also speaking to our higher selves, to the things that we really, really are passionate about exploring and learning more about so that we can publish and share that amongst the world. So back then, what was happening? I have clients that were wrapping up ideas that they'd been forming for the past little while about how some of them wanted, one particular client I'll talk about was looking at the prospect of moving like out of country, right? And developing a new practice out of country or just traveling for a certain amount of time. And there was a realization that came before this period of time, before that new moon, where it was kind of rose-colored glasses going in, and they'd taken a trip and they'd gone there to a place that they were considering moving to, and they realized that it was not really up to snuff. It wasn't really what they wanted, and so it began this new cycle of them exploring where is it that they do want to end up. What are the possible outcomes that they could have? Maybe they want to move more local, maybe still outside of the city, but maybe more local in terms of, outside of the city and developing a life in the country. That was something that was coming up for them. When I look at our world here and I look at my daughter, and I alluded to this in a video, in a reel I did on Instagram, my daughter back then was trying out for a school play. And she was really keen on getting the lead role. It was Moana, and she really wanted to do Moana. And it was in December, the beginning of December, where she tried out for the school play. And she had to wait a really long time in order to see if she got that role. So all of December, she had no idea. We had gone away for the winter holidays, and we came back, and it really wasn't until Capricorn season, the next one, that we got to see if she would get that role. But she was busy during that time really exploring herself. She was looking at the things that she was passionate about. She started singing a lot, and she started taking singing lessons, and she started exploring different musicals, not only from the singing aspect of it, but also from the acting perspective, and doing all kinds of things. And so now when I look at that for her, and it brings us to this full moon, she last night got to star in the show. She did end up getting the role of Moana, and she got to star in that show last night at this full moon cumulative point from the energies that occurred and started 6 months ago. For myself personally, I also talked about this in that short little reel, that I was back then in December looking at opportunities to kind of explore my community and do workshops in order to get in-person work, right? And it turned out that I wasn't really getting much out of that. I wasn't receiving the feedback that I wanted versus the feedback that was encouraging me to go after how I can grow sort of an online community and work with the company that I work with, the Maven's Call, as to how we can continue to build our platform so that I can be of support in my coaching practice that way and build our community, right? That is where my focus was going. And that's really showing up right now for me in terms of working with my clients one-on-one. And also in terms of the next stages that we're going to be launching with the Maven's Call, where I'm showing up in a greater purpose of consulting with new Mavens coming in and to their long-term plans. And that, continues to build. I have other clients that were working back then with new ways of taking care of their bodies. They were exploring new potential. They were looking for healing practices that they could embrace on a day-to-day basis that would help them to heal. Some of them have issues of fatigue that they were trying to overcome. Some of them have other issues that they weren't really quite sure what was happening. And so they were looking to different kinds of practitioners and practitioners that were out of the box, things that they could explore new perspectives and new horizons in terms of that. So there's a lot of holistic practitioners and I don't know, different ways of body work and different meditative practices and other things. And so where has that landed for them there? I have the people, like I said, that were starting to explore those things. And throughout the 6 months that followed, they kept some, they left, they allowed some to drop off, and some of them that they even allowed to drop off, they are now revisiting now because they found that that was what was working for them the most, and they want to continue to work with those people in terms of furthering their expansion from now until the next new moon in that energy, which will occur in the fall, right? Which will occur next December. And so we'll be able to see the growth and the accountability that shows up from during that time frame. So the important thing that I'm encouraging us to look at right now is what was coming up 6 months ago and how is that showing up now? Where is that really in, where is it sitting in its cumulative effect? So we've been growing and growing and growing. Now there's full light there. How is that? How are we being held accountable for what we were exploring? And how is that now showing itself? And from this point moving forward, it will take us to 6 months from now in the future, where we will continue to work with these cycles into the next new moon as to we can how we will continue to expand upon that and grow and heal and do all the things that we want to be doing and working on. I have a number of clients actually who are working through this energy within their life arena of how they are using their own resources within their community, within the people that they work with, in order to discover new ways of sharing their resources amongst people to further their growth and further the things that they're trying to expand upon. And then I have some clients where that energy is reversed. And so they are exploring potential ways of sharing resources with other people and where that started. So I have some people that have businesses where they have been looking at starting to hire new people to work with them and what that will look like in terms of sharing resources with other people to expand upon the greater business and allow the next stage of that growth to take place. And in the meantime, they have decided if things are coming full circle at this point in the cycle where they've started to interview or they've even started to train and integrate these people into the workplace. For some people, that's showing up in a positive way, and for other people, it's showing up in a way that's telling them, really refining what it is that they're looking for, so that they can possibly not work with people that have been showing up and start looking for a certain specific, very refined idea of who it is that is going to match them specifically. So I encourage you to look back at your life from December 1st all through the month of December and see how the things that were coming up then are showing themselves right now. That could be showing up in the way that you want to be in your career, the grander scale, like how you are known, your reputation, the things that you're known for. It can be looking at your place of home and what you are being working for. I have other people that are trying to grow their family, and they were starting to have new discussions as to what that could possibly look like, be it in terms of exploring their own physicality and how that can happen, or other ways of having children, or maybe not having children and looking at where they want to move to, and all kinds of things that have to do that's related to the home. Other people, it is showing up where they show up for community and how they started to show up for community, how it looks right now. And by community, I mean like the larger grand scope of community, in terms of society and what they want to be known for and how they can contribute to the grander society. And how is that showing up for them now? What still needs to be worked on in the next 6 months to flow before we get to this next opportunity where we can have some new beginnings there? So that would be the longer scale when we look at it from a year perspective, how you can work with the energy of Sagittarius. And next, we're going to talk about how we can work with the energy of Sagittarius within this specific lunar cycle. So 3 weeks ago, we began with the lunar cycle of Gemini, and that, here she is. This is our messenger. It is also the sign of the twins. It is the sign of receiving information, feeling out our environments, learning how we can adapt and make changes, learning how we can work together with other people, and learning how to just be playful and move with our plans so that we can continue to move them forward in what we're doing. And that's the overall cycle. The cycle began on May the 27th, and it will take us through until June 24th, I believe. Yep. And then and so working with the cycle over these 4 weeks, we started off by starting to receive some clarity as to how we are working with our environments, how we can learn from our environments, the things that we need to change within our environments that are going to be supportive of moving our plans forward. And then last week we started working with the idea of developing some awareness as to what we actually needed to improve upon. And that had a lot to do with taking care of ourselves on a day-to-day basis, what our schedules looked like, what our routines looked like, with the way that we had self-care, that we were managing our time and our money and our other resources that allowed us to show up and be of service to other people. So how we are using our community and our environments and our people and our places and our things, how we have to make some adjustments to ourselves, and how we manage our own resources within all that. And it brings us to week 3, which is where we are now, in this accountability stage with the full light being shown. And it really draws to the idea as to what is the higher thing that we want to be known for? What is our higher purpose? What are the grander things that we're working on in terms of what's so important to us, and how we want to further our knowledge and show up as a grand teacher of things, right? Gemini is a sign of learning, and its opposite sign is Sagittarius, this full moon energy, where we are the teacher of the things that we are learning. So, how is that showing up for everybody at this point? What have we been processing? A lot of clients have really been commenting on their nerves being kind of all awry, because Gemini is a very busy season. There's a lot going on. We are communicating, we are being social, we are engaging. It is also, we're right in the thick of spring, and we're outside more. We are involving ourselves in interactions outside of the home more and more as we get out there. And so there's a lot happening. There's also a shift from the year that we've had for many of us. For those of us with children, you have a shift from the school year into the summer months, and what that's going to look like, and the whole change in the environments there. We're saying goodbye to old environments of the school year and old extracurricular activities, and we're starting to shift into the new that is developing. For me, that's been extremely busy, and I know for most parents that I speak to, it's also been extremely busy. For other people, where they are working on the energy within themselves and what they're learning about themselves and their own personality and their own identity, and how they, last week, a lot of people were speaking to the point that they've started to make some realizations in terms of their care and their self-care, and understanding their environments might be not working with them for that self-care. So a number of clients that I have, mold has come up in various instances. Sometimes mold has come up within the home, sometimes mold has come up within the workplace, but it's showing us this insight as to things that are within our environments that are affecting the way that we're able to process life, the way that we're able to show up in our lives and do the things that we're leading towards. So there's full light now being shown as to what it looks like on the day to day, what's happening in the day to day that's causing some stuff. What do we need to learn even more about in order to kind of affect our daily day lives? How do we change up our routines and our schedules, that kind of stuff? Where else is this energy showing up? It is showing up in terms processing the things that we are working on and learning about, in terms of our creative passions, are the things that we're most passionate about and that we're trying to create, these projects that we're trying to create. And the opposite energy is showing how that's being seen in the greater expansion of that, the greater good, the greater society, the things that we would like to build to contribute. How is that being seen? And now, where do we need to start looking at how we can make changes or make adjustments and start to adapt, so that we are actually being of greater service to the greater goals of our communities that we want to belong to, or that we do belong to. I know for me personally, this month when we started was a lot about, I was really stepping into some coaching that was going on, and I was learning about the next stages of things that I want to contribute. But it's also been a really reflective period for me in terms of the growth that I want to do on an online perspective and building that online community. And now to take a step back and be reflective of that, and where things are not working, looking at my analytics, things that are just beyond, like my videos are super long, and how I can start to refine that and really hone in on the purpose and where I need to be showing up in a way that is going to get engagement from people and show people what I have to offer. So as we close out this cycle, and as that moon goes from its beautiful fullness right now, it's going to start to dissipate. It's going to start showing me within the next week the foundational things, resources, and skills that I really need to hone in on that are going to be effective. And it's going to start to also show me how my goals and what I'm doing is going to be able to contribute to the greater goals and the greater good of the different communities that I hope to belong to and to be of service to. So it's not just from a work perspective, but it's also in terms of how I've been learning about the new ways to show up for my kids and take them to new activities and do all kinds of new things. We need to now build that into a sustainable routine. We just built a pool. That is a whole other beast that we are learning all about. We are learning how to take care of this pool, and now we're trying to establish some routines. We also put it out there. Gemini sits within my house of within my life arena of home and family and things that were, cycles that you're breaking or cycles that you're moving through and ways of doing things in a new way in that regard, in a way that is nurturing to myself. And we are having a family party at the end of the month. So learning how to develop new ways of working with family. I talked before at the beginning of this video about how I've really changed the way that I communicate and interact with not only different friend groups, but also within my family. And so building in new ways of doing that. And now we need to set up some foundations that's going to support that and show up for people in a way that everyone's going to be here and we're going to engage with one another in a way that speaks to how we all want to be a part of each other's lives. And that will occur for us at the end of the month, is even going into the next cycle, but that's a different story. For some of my clients that feel this energy strongest within their own sense of personal resources, how they're growing their own resources of time and money and energy, and how they place value on that so that they can build the things that they want to build. So that really has to do with like personal resources. Gemini season has been all about exploring how to share their resources in terms of the greater communities that they work with, and learn how to be adaptive and learn to meet with new people, and also how they're learning to receive that the way that they interact with new people that are coming in. I talked in the last section about possibly interviewing and trying to train or hire new people that are coming in that they're going to share their resources with in order to expand their businesses. It's really been this the full moon is a really big um, glaring insight as to what they value, what they think is most important, and how these new people that are coming in, how they sit with what they feel is important for what needs to be shared and shown and used in terms of growing the businesses, right? And so they're being reflective now. And so it really will be an opportunity for them to build their own foundation of what that looks like, maybe make some review and some refinement, and maybe reach out to the broader society, broader collective, in order to find people that actually sit within that. Maybe it's not working the way that they had hoped, and so they need to look at other potentials that's going to help them move forward with their goals. So I think that's where I will leave it in terms of the 4 weeks that we're working with now, the accountability that we're showing up in right now, what is showing up in terms of not just the ways that we're learning and responding, but really how we want to be showing up in terms of the things that we want to share. Those two are interchangeable, and it's very much how we learn and react to our environments is going to show itself in terms of how we show up in the world and the things that we want to learn and explore even further. So the full moon, as I've also talked about, can be a very emotional time. This can be it's Sagittarius, so it can be a jovial and expansive and beautiful time, but it can also be very reflective as to what might not actually be adding up the way that we had hoped. But that energy is really there to show us how we can continue to work with this and the rest of this cycle to learn more about what we do want and to start to adapt and make some changes in terms of our resources, in terms of the people that we associate with and that we need to learn to associate with, or gain new people that we can associate with, so that next week when we move into that last quarter moon phase, and that will happen with the sign of Pisces, we're able to finally start letting go of, some of the anxieties that we feel, some of the fears that we have around expected outcomes and what we thought was going to be possible, so that we can start to plan for the new things. And that whole last week will also dive into, we have these grand visions and these new ideas of these things that we want to be creating in our world. And so what can we really start to focus on? What's most important about that? What do we value the most as well about these things that we're trying to create, so that we can start to hone that in? So I hope that this was useful. It is a new way that I'm doing this video, so I will get better at that. I hope that it does speak to, though, how I do want to show up and share the gifts that I have and look at the grand scheme of what I believe astrology can share, and what the different ways that I work with clients in terms of planning, and that it is small scale. It can be looking at the month ahead of us. It can be looking at the 6 month span of the energies that we're working with, and it can be looking at these grander cycles that we work with that really are like 18 years in the making, and we look at that in 9-year increments. So there's different ways that we look at it. I hope it was useful. I'm losing my voice, so I'm going to duck out now. But that's it. And feel free to reach out at any point to work with me one-on-one. I would love to do so. I have lots of other ways that I share my gifts and my knowledge, and you can look at the archetypes of the Zodiac course. It still is running its spring cohort, but we'll be going into the summer cohort. More on that to come. That will start at the end of this month. So I'll be sharing a lot more of that information when we get to the next new moon phase, which will happen on June the 25th. So take care for now, and I'll see you next time.